Okay, so let's start. So today we have a very special presentation. We're going to be talking about the platform economy, and platform economy is where it's at. It's where you can fit in all the newest technologies, neural network, machine learning. And today we also have a very special person who's going to present you this topic. He is a fellow IN4ACT researcher. He's an engineer. He's a data scientist. As soon as I hear people talking about data science, my ears goes like this because it's really interesting. So let me present to you Mr. Dr. Peiman Alipour Sarvari. I hope I pronounced your name right.
Okay, it was cool. Peiman. It was a nice presentation. Thank you very much, Andrius.
No problem.
Likewise. Okay. Hello, everybody. As Andrius mentioned, my name is Peiman. You can consider Peiman, from the credit cards and payments or something. I'm actually IN4ACT Researcher. I am residing in Luxembourg, and I am participating in this project as a half-time fellow researcher. Today we are going to address a very important issue, which you can call it, key challenges regarding the privacy and the citizen empowerment in the platform economy and infospheres. That I will have, I assume, 45 minutes or less. I will try to give as much as I can. So regarding this, let's continue with the presentation. I will just make it minimize for everything because it is covering whole my screen. And this way we can continue like this. Okay, I can see my screen right now. Okay. Actually, let me start like this, that today we are going to talk about a domain which is a kind of infosphere. It means a technological approach to the philosophy concept, and it is actually targeting social scientists, legal scientists, and technology scientists mostly. Despite computer scientists, those have give, the social scientists a cold shoulder when it comes to cyber security and personal data security. I want to emphasize the importance of stepping in the area by business managers and humanitarian scientists to help technologists with stopping them from going on a wild goose chase. So for that regard, I want to go through the materials that we have in here. I will start with the definition of platform and overview regarding that. We will try to understand why we need platforms and what is the role of the platform data in the platform economy. We will have trust shaking incidents examples in here. We will consider public and platform owners' concerns that is the main topic, and how to improve platforms trustworthiness. And if we had time as a bonus, I will give you a related research question or let's call it project idea. So starting with the platform types of platforms or platform definition, which is a kind of overview in here. I remember from a book named Why the Future of Business is Sharing from Gansky, who defines the term mesh economy as emerging new businesses with a broader scope than sharing economy. Mesh economy involves not only sharing of private peer goods, but also access-based consumption of goods owned by companies. So what is the meaning of the access economy in this part? Access economy always refers to renting assets on a temporary basis, producing environmental benefits through reduced mass consumption. Some examples might be Airbnb, Zipcar, Uber. Those are very good examples of this access economy concept. The other concept is in here is the gig economy, which is obviously targeting the temporary flexible jobs for gig scientists or gig workers, and for high level, let's call it technologists, that it is just connecting businesses to businesses, people to people. But the sharing economy in the middle is a kind of an intersection between access economy and gig economy, with having more flexibilities that most of the time they consider it as a peer-to-peer or person-to-person sharing concept, which is trying to share everything as much as they can, starting from knowledge to materials to services. So whatever you name or call a phenomena, nothing can even go one step further without a working business model under the hood. If you ask me, sharing economy by itself is a business model, and it mostly actually turns to different shapes that we see around our communities, that like search platforms, like social media platforms, booking platforms, payment platforms, and etc. That the most successful of these examples can be kind of Yahoo or WeChat and Zipcar and etc. So I don't want to spend lots of time in here. I go to the actors in platform economy that like every business, you have a consumer or customer, and you have provider or seller. But meanwhile, you have also platform providers. Those are actually owning the platform, and they are regulating, orchestrating, and managing the whole system. And we have also complementers around that, mostly maybe researchers or service companies or universities can step in and help these service delivery or platform, let's call it quality. Meanwhile, you have other actors that one example of them are incumbents, that they are helping platforms and for the best of the platforms. Coming here to this slide that I always like it, and it is very brief and concise, the definition of platforms and ownerships, we can actually understand that business models actually were the topic that we talked about them, and we said they are very important. But we could consider platforms in two dimensions: the concept of ownership and the concept of private provided resources. You can simply see that from left to right, we have reduction on the level of ownership. For example, Uber, Airbnb, Zipcar, and WeChat are not offering the ownership of their facilities and products. You can't own the car when you call an Uber. The car owner is coming, actually. And when it comes to products, providers like Amazon and eBay, you can see that you can own the product, and Amazon is selling you the product, and you are the owner. So from the bottom to up, we have increased level of peer-to-peer interactions. For example, you get your product directly from Amazon and Zipcar, while for eBay and Uber, you have a direct interact with the provider and the consumer or customer, for sure. So in this case, you can simply see that actually the resources, those are provided. You can own it, or you can just have the service. Also, you can see that how platform owners are behaving in here. Are you going to meet directly the provider, or you are meeting a platform like Amazon directly? That is the question in here. That business models are designed based on this concept. Speaking about the overview of design aspects for a sharing platform, we have very important entities like business models, governance, we have a market transaction concept, and we have cultural effects in here that most of the time they are unwritten rules and very important. Whatever happens actually in the platform economy is targeting these cultural issues, because if you look at the global level, you have very limited numbers of platforms. Those are worldwide, like Facebook, like Amazon. But when it comes to regional level, you have thousands of successful platforms, because these regional and local platforms are targeting the cultural topics, the governance, regulation concepts as well. And their business models are shaping based on these culture factor, which is extremely important. This slide is trying to show you that how the entities of a platforms are working from starting to end, and it is a kind of simple general business model. But in the middle, you can see that scientists are trying to put some extra innovations inside with providing some trust building self-regulating mechanisms. Why self-regulating mechanisms? Because trust on human is just one of the problems in here, and most of the time customers or providers, nevertheless, if you consider the local or international providers, they always need to have a high level of, let's call it, trust and safety. So this example can give you the main idea that where we can step in, and where we can just consider these safety security concepts as well. In this section, I want to see why do we need sharing economy and sharing economy platforms for the best. There are lots of information that you can find everywhere, but I can summarize it like this: that at least there is a system in a platform economy. There is a business model, and you don't need to do capital investments on something. For example, you don't need to buy a bike wherever you travel, you just rent it. So operational costs are the case in here. Operational costs might be very limited most of the time, and that is a good thing. Lots of data are producing throughout across these platforms, and they are useful most of the time. And higher quality of products are the case. Actually, competitive prices, because of the lots of providers and lots of feedbacks and lots of customers. The other concept is the fair access to market, because you have transparency in this kind of platforms. You have democratized features of platforms. Those are helping entrepreneurships. Those are helping the small householders, or are helping SMEs to step into the system and try to do some added value there. This is one example speaking about economic impact of platform economy. It is a very simple example that you can see that just 1 month before establishing a bike sharing platform in a city in China, you had these rate and these amounts of sales in this city. In the left, you can see. But after establishing a bike sharing company or platform, after 1 year, you can see that the sales from supermarkets or restaurants are actually increased highly, and you can see the high level in the very right side of the page. You can see that it is very high. and the local actually businesses got very good improvement in this case. It is very actually descriptive example of the economic impact of the platform economy. This is another example that might be interested for environmentalists, that environmental impact is really important when you have a Uber pool in your community or in your region. You can see in the left, when you didn't have a Uber pool, the traffic levels are very high. You can see different colors in here that in this part of page, you can see that you have yellow color means the traffic is high and red is the highest. But when it comes to the right side of the page, you have a Uber pool, and at the same time of the day, you have less traffic and you have a better environmental impact thanks to this platform. So as we know, they consider data as the blood of the system, and they tell it is new oil, new gold. And what is valuable, always there is corruption when you have some valuable things around in an ecosystem. So because of that, when you have corruption in some domain, you have actually, let's call it preventions also that you need to consider. But first of all, let's discuss about data and let's categorize it that what is what. In here you have open data concepts, that is census data. You have a processed algorithmic data, that is the output of a system or of a machine learning tool that is giving you the understanding and insights like your credit card score. You have shared data, which mostly is regarding to the grid, actually grid connected systems, for example, like a smart home data, it is one of them. Personal data, which is the main topic of this actually concerns that we will consider in here, and it is mostly regarding the concept of your credit card information, your address, your localization, let's call it your health information, your income, and this kind of information. Those are extremely important, and collecting or using personal data with any motivation is a felony and a real definition of committing crime, and would be sued by legal entities, at least in Europe. For sure, we know that general data protection rights in the US nowadays, I don't know what is going on there, but in the past it was awful, and the data was just flying around from hand to hand. So yeah, they collect whatever they can, and they don't need a reason to collect the data nowadays. But when it comes to platform concept and understanding that why and how they are collecting the data and how they use our data, we can see there are three models in here. First, they collect your data, or they don't collect your data and they don't share it, like DuckDuckGo.com, that they don't care about your data, at least they tell it. About shared with app developers, that like Google, they collect your data and they just work on your data themselves, and most of the time they don't share it with the third parties, at least they tell it like this. Shared with third parties, that is very extremely common, and it's the kind of practice in the US, and they share it with the third parties. They collect the data, they just share. They call it sharing, but most of the time it is selling the data. So these kind of activities are happening in the platforms. When it comes to ask them why you collect our data, they have one justification like this, that we want to improve the quality of products and services. We want to help you to have the best service in the best time, in the best quality. This is their answer. For that, They show this kind of graphics. They say we collect your data, we work on your data, and at the end we deliver insights, and thanks to those insights we save your life, for example, or you spend less money. But we know that there were trust-shaking incidents around the globe, and their number weren't so low in these circumstances. We always actually give them the benefit of the doubt, and they misuse our data and they misuse our trust. One example is Uber, that we trusted them. We shared our credit card information with them, and in 2016, I think it was 2016, two hackers just accessed our data, and they served free foods for their families, friends, and even they stole our data and they said it. One of my friends in Canada got messages during the nights and days from Uber Food that somebody was delivering 200, 300 pizza per time in India, and he was paying for pizzas for somebody who was living in India. It was one of the accidents that happened thanks to this Uber. 57 million users' information got stolen, and do you know Uber did what? In response, they bribed the hacker with $100,000, and after 1 year, they just told the society and the public that sorry, the data was breached, and we paid 100,000 euros, but that wasn't enough. So the legal entities fined them with $148 million. That I'm not sure if it was enough for such a company like Uber. The other example would be Google, that actually it was related to Google Plus, and most of there was a really, let's call it the information breach and privacy breach, and most of the data out of Google Plus API got stolen, and we had difficulties at that time regarding these issue. The other concept that I want to mention in here is that Facebook also actually faced a data mishap. They call it mishap. With a design flaw that granted Cambridge Analytica, which is a political consulting firm, with letting them to access to the millions of users' private, Facebook users' profiles. And this data wasn't let's call it small. It was 87 million users information, and they did it in 2012 or 14, and they predicted 2016's elections, and it happened to the war. So actually, this guy who is sitting there and drinking water, actually were actually using some cutting corners and bad designed, at least they are telling bad design, but we think it was intentionally, cybersecurity systems. And these systems weren't enough to support the data of people around the world. And also, this person caused a perfect storm for humanity. And after a while, we saw that what happened. Actually, when it comes to talk about privacy concerns to this kind of giant company, they believe that a penny saved is a penny earned. So that is one of the problems, that they don't give research and they don't give, let's call it, technology potentials to come into the area and help them with some useful activities. So in this part, you can see that they also got a fine like $5 billion, but for Facebook, it is not so large amount. When it comes to discuss the the negative impacts of this kind of incidents on platforms, we can see that 45% of community have already, concern around this data safety and security, and it is actually stopping them of conducting financial transactions, posting on social network, buying goods or services, and even speaking about their personal beliefs about politics or policies around the social media. That is extremely dangerous for platforms. But when you ask them that who is spying on you, they point Facebook. But even now we have almost 3 billion users active, not active, but 3 billion users on Facebook. That 2 billions of them are active. And we have other Chinese companies like TikTok, and I don't know what are the others, the yellow one, but they are, not the source of trust, but still billions of people keeping their profiles there. Why? Because they need it. Speaking about concerns, we can consider that, what happens if your data gets in the wrong hands. The answer is so simple, and it happens to all of us, all of you, that they are just overwhelming us with robocalls and emails in an attempt to scam out with information. And you receive always some stupid messages from some, I don't know, from some platform, some web page. The other one is that they attempt to break into your social media accounts and gain access to information about your family and your friends. That is extremely serious. This one is that they try to obtain your private information about your company or your business, and that's huge. And the last one is that they access to your bank, or they use your accounts, and they can simply rob you. Unfortunately, nowadays, hearing about our stolen personal data is a dime a dozen, and it is so normal. And when it comes to discuss about the techniques that you can do, they just come out with the reasons. If you ask them why you want my credit card information, why you want my address, why you want my ID and personal information, their answer is justified with answers like this photo. They tell, because we need to preserve our properties and infrastructure. Actually, sometimes they are right, because this is what happened to that company. Those didn't ask for the credit card information, and this is what happens to their bikes. People just mess around with their let's call it bikes and bicycles. But we discussed about the data, that how we can share it, or should we share it, or what will happen to our data, and etc. But let's listen to this guy who, during this pandemic, he was telling that if contact tracing is used for a higher purpose, such as my health and my community's safety, the risk of privacy breaches is bearable. That's in one point, that's extremely true, and that's let's call it we can trust the system or the government when they want to just trace us. But in most of the points, we have lots of reasons to not accept this idea, because there should be better ways. There should be faster ways than this one, that you go with the simplest possible way to just ask people's information and data to just help them with pandemic. There are two discussions around this topic. The first one is telling that let's stop sharing data. And the second one is telling that let's overwhelm them with lots of data. Let's give them all the data they need, and let's see what will happen. That you know, the second idea is very pragmatic and a bit you know dangerous, but legislation system should consider it as a kind of option. In this part, I want to discuss the topic that how we can improve the trustworthiness of our platform. The first things that comes into mind is that let's empower the citizen. Let's help them to understand their rights, and let's them to just prevent their data and preserve their information from these kind of felonies around the data and data privacy. Let's teach them, let's train them, and also let's have some technologies that simply learn from the data breaches and from the people behavior to just preserve this kind of, let's call it privacies. So they translate it as citizen empowerment. And there is a very nice paper regarding that on literature, and I really recommend it. Speaking about the key concepts when dealing with privacy, we can consider for those wants to do research that all of these concepts in here are extremely important, and from the business and social science point of view, it can be considered. Like considering the participants into a platform, or the data formats that they require from your site, the privacy techniques and legislations that they have, the types of attacks those are targeting this kind of platforms, the reason of the utilizing your data, why they want our data. They need to come out with better justification. And what is their safety and security policies in here? That this is not a question that I can ask to Google or Amazon. This is a question that that universities or governments or legal entities can ask to the Amazon. So there are lots of research domains open for asking right questions from Amazon and other large platforms in this domain, that to see how their data and data privacy policies are working. Being said about that, how we can empower the human, there is a technique and literature calling privacy enhancing technologies. This privacy enhancing technology comes in 3 levels. The first one is user side techniques, that it is extremely important and it is an operational level activity. The second one is server side techniques, that it is also important and it must be considered via both platform owner and the legislation system around that. And the third one is channel side techniques, that it can elaborate into the secure communication concepts and technologies like blockchain or encryption systems, ciphering and deciphering techniques, normalization techniques, and etc. So I don't want to go into the detail in this part, but what is important is that there are open research domains in this concept that we can consider. The other concept that is very important is privacy friendliness concept, and actually possible participants around this concept of application, let's call it, that it is starting with the users and users profiles coming to the system. Also, it starts with the attackers and their targets, that what they want to see out of a platform. And out of that, these 2 persons, we have all the people in our side to fight with these attackers, like privacy assurance agents, like data analysis, like project owners, I don't know, regulatory agencies, and etc., that they put all their efforts to save the platform from this kind of attacks and activities. After showing that slide and talking that why, how and why we need to prevent our technologies and platform, in here we have two levels that it's perfectly demonstrated in here, and it is actually dividing computer scientists from the other scientists in the domain that they can help, like developing. For sure, we need a development team that they start the project and they end it with variety of techniques and technologies that they can consider, starting from writing codes or using ad hoc techniques. But the other one is the privacy team that they need to consider the reality of the society, community, and the scenarios that may have happened during a actionable platform. So in here, you can simply see that identifying the formats of data that can be extracted from people is also a kind of business activity in here, and social scientists can step in this domain also. And the other potential attacks and the motivation behind these potential attacks are also other domains of research that can be considered in here. I escaped this slide to come to this very technical slide. It is, blockchain technology, which they consider it as a kind of a savior for data and data privacy. And nowadays, most of people are aware of that thanks to the Bitcoin and the price of Bitcoin. But actually, to me, the real value in here is the technology. Bitcoin is not the real value. In here, technology of the blockchain is extremely important, and it can save lots of data. It is one simple example of smart contracts that one student in the university, as we are in the university environment, I put this example in here, that one student can manage and can be the king of his own data. And most of actually people, those have access to this data stream, they cannot breach this data, or they cannot use this data because they have a very small part of that, because it is distributed system and the data is shared between thousands of entities and shareholders, and it is safe. And a student himself can manage their data, and the third party might be the university or the government or the governance of this fellow in here can manage the data. So from this point of view, I think blockchain technology could be a kind of good technology that it is worth it to learn about it, and to use some business models, let's call it some examples, or some legal entities in it to justify the activities there. So I put this slide in here as well. As we have 5 minutes time, I have backups in here to show you one exemplary research or project topic that can be useful for our university if they want to do some research in here, especially for our students and proposal writers. In here, you can see that we have a concept of automatic system that is dealing with GDPR. I mean, general data privacy, sorry, general data protection rights, and the citizen, and the whole environment and ecosystem is around these two topics. First, the rights of citizen, and the second is the rules that governments are putting there. So in here, governance, risk, and compliance reviews is very important in here, because we will have a data protection officer that we can consider it as a kind of machine or a kind of supervised system or human that can understand the concept of working system with having a dynamic and self-regulator system that is trying to enhance all the activities, all the movement of data based on the protocols. Those are defined already in GDPR. And this way, government also can have a kind of supervised vision on their data without having solely, or let's call it completely, access to this data. So this way, this data will be in the middle, in the control of citizen, and citizen also will see how this data is moving throughout the system. And if he wants, he can simply delete his data from Amazon without asking Amazon, or he can simply see that where his credit card informations are moving throughout the data pipeline of Amazon. They can trace their data. That's one exemplary project that it is extremely important. And you can see in this part that the GDPR process model is residing between actually governance, risk and compliance concept, and the internal policies or GDPR protocols and guidelines. So this way, with some process assessment, the data owner can be aware of all the data that he has there. So for that, we need a process map, and this process map starts from right to be informed, right of access for the citizen, right to restriction of his data, and right to make some objection and managing his own data. Actually playing with the consent that he already gave to the data requester, because for a normal website, they ask for our consent. When we want to read an article, they ask our consent and we just approve it simply, but we don't know that what will happen afterwards, because they just ask once and they don't ask tomorrow again. So if I had a right to not give it again or cancel it after reading my paper, that would be excellent. And it can also stop the data transfer and also data breaches. So after this step that we get aware of what we could there, we can have these, let's call it adequate measures to ensure our data protection. You can see in here that whatever activities around this mechanism, like optimizing, predicting, or managing it via different performance, can go through management consent, it can go through data owner consent, it can go through, let's call it achieved or not achieved insights that you are not going to share them with anybody. Because consider the ethnical information, it is extremely interesting, because out of your purchase records, they can simply understand your ethnical map. They can understand simply even sometimes your DNA map partially, and that is extremely important, that how you manage your purchase data that you just bought for the first and last time from a company, and that's it. So this machine that I'm proposing in here, and I just will finish in 1 minute, Andrius, is trying to just summarizing all the activities around this ecosystem of data on the platforms, and with giving some measurements to control the activities around these data movement, data extraction, data analysis, and actually if they fire back or not, and giving full control to the data owner. So it's extremely important in this point. Okay, I stop in here. I have 16 more slides in in backup, but I go back to the conclusion, and I can summarize it that what is the matter in here is that we need to comply with GDPR. The other one is that we need a mechanism to allow companies to build the trust that is required to take advantage of digital economy. Also, a systematic to entail companies to adapt existing organizational processes or let's call it implement new ones. Let's consider it like that. We also need to a GDPR process model which describes organizational processes in a very transparent and accessible manner. And the other one is GDPR process model, which is the niche for any research on this domain that we can consider it as a kind of output of the business model that is designed there. It can also formalize the business model itself. And the other one is the associated method and methodological tools enabling process assessment and process risk determination should be a kind of objective for our research in this domain. So whatever happens in here, business and let's call it social scientists needs to step in and take the ball out of the field of computer scientists, because whatever they do is just benefiting of the data for the moment because they are interested about the data. But our social scientists can be considered and put human in the center. Thank you very much. Any question?
Great presentation, Peiman. Very insightful, very nice. I really liked it. So guys, ask questions, write as a messages. I will try to ask those questions to Peiman because he really knows what he's doing. So, but before any questions come up, I mean, I have my own questions. There's sort of like a hypothesis, maybe an idea or a discussion. So I am worried as a social scientist about this monopolic behavior, right? So if you take about, let's say the tourism sector, if I go and buy tickets, train tickets in Italy, I will get different prices because of different location. If I change my proxy from my internet, then I will get another price, right? So this is, I mean, it has been replicated. So this is what is called a monopolic behavior. You know, one price for this guy, one price for this girl, and this is very unfair, and this is very dangerous. I mean, economists have always tried to avoid monopolies because they are like the epitome, you know, of dangerosity, if I may say. And also, I mean, the similar behavior happened with the GameSpot, and you definitely know about this. I mean, it really blew up in the internet in the weeks. You know, the GameSpot, and I am somebody who had studied finance, and you know, when I study and when I look at what's happening, like if I make with my phone, if I invest in a stock, right, and I put a position that in 1 month I will sell the stock if it goes above or below the price. All the hedge funds, the Goldman Sachs or any other banks, they know my position because they can buy the data. If they know my position, they can exploit me. I mean, this is like real dangerous. So, I mean, you touched a little bit upon how privacy, and from what I see is like blockchain is our only hope. And how do you think this should be handled? Because to have data on company servers is sort of dangerous because I'm not going to catch them selling data. And is the blockchain the only hope, or should the government step in and do something? Like, I don't know. I mean, this is impossible to answer, I guess, but for discussion,
Yes, excellent. Excellent 3 questions. So, yeah, I can start with the first one that you mentioned different prices for different airliners. There are 2 reasons. The first one is the legislative context. For example, the tax rates in different countries are changing from country to another country. For example, for Netflix also, you can see that in a country like, I don't know, maybe in Lithuania, it is a bit cheaper or much more expensive than France, or I don't know, in Luxembourg or even the US. because the legislation are changing. The second factor is that amount of data is the problem there. Look, you know what is the main reason that after buying a ticket, you buy a ticket and you schedule your flight. That's it. You bought the flight ticket. That's it. You finished it. 1 minute later, you are receiving another advertisement about buying a ticket. Why? Because they have less data. They have a small amount of data, and they don't understand that. Look, you already bought your ticket. You don't need it anymore, and they just bombing you with lots of data, advertisement, asking for more interaction because they want to grab your data. So this is one example that why it is cheaper in some countries and expensive in other countries. If it is cheaper in one country, you can be sure that they are reimbursing it from other channel. They are they're using your data in another way. You can be sure. And if it is very expensive in another country, maybe they have other regulation for that, and because of that. That's one example. The second question about the stock markets and this recent news about Wall Street and what happened there is that yes, they always did it, and they are doing it for 20 years, and they collect your data. They have different margins of stock market prices, and when they see these margins, they change the prices. They sell it or they buy it. They are using your data for ages, and this is the reality that the extremely rich, let's call it what they call it, the wolf of Wall Streets
Yeah.
are there, and these people there, they use this kind of local and international data that mostly Chinese government also is just they tell that they are using this kind of data. That's a reality that it happens nowadays. Blockchain is not the sole saver, because also blockchain has its own difficulties. It's expensive, it is slow, and it is coming with its own constraints. But at least we don't know at least the mathematics behind of the blockchain, and for a while it can help us. But there are thousands of research on it that it can make blockchain extremely ciphered and difficult to decipher. For sure, quantum computing will solve the problem of blockchain in 1 minute like this. But still we have works on that, and it will make it much more difficult. I think blockchain technology is the best so far for the moment. Yeah.
Right, right. So we got our first question from Alessandro. He's very worried. He's very worried
Oh my God.
that we have to think that such data can be exploited by governments, countries, in particular by less democratic ones, but not just by them. This is probably also a bigger risk, right? So
Mm-hmm.
definitely, I mean, there's a company problem. There's also, if you have less democratic countries, they might even exploit, follow their citizens, and gather data and even further their regime, I guess. What do you think about this, Peiman? Should
That's
we be worried as well?
Yes, you know, my limited information just helped me to think about that, why they need our data, especially governments. Look, governments are not are just like entrepreneurs and are businessmen actually. Also, they need the data because they also selling something to different customers. So they need this data. Defining which government is good or bad, which regime is using our data in a good way or bad way is another topic. But having access to this data and having access to the actually to the personal and private information is not so difficult for governments. They already have it. They already have it, and we don't have any chance than trusting them. And for the moment, my understanding is that uh, they want more. They want more data, and they are collecting it. So if you are afraid, Alessandro, we are late. We are late, and the governments, they are just using it.
Yes, if I can just add something on what Peiman and Andrius were saying, is that this tickets buying online process has been introduced as one of the open innovation projects in one of the company, and it comes as an idea of the consumers to simplify the way of this process, but very fast the airlines realize that this is a very powerful tool to play with the prices much better. So that's what they were saying, oh, it's all about you, to make it easier for you as a passenger, or more comfortable or more optimized economic, is of course not true, because it is a powerful tool, like an example in another process, to manage the data, manipulate it according to the moment, according to the behaving, and according to the emotions even right now. So this is gonna get really more exposed if, as Peiman says, some legal framework is not going to introduce some kind of rules here. And my question is, if I can use the stage to ask.
Here comes the question. Here comes the question.
As the user data centric approach is has been discussing the Commission quite long time, and it also has some kind of open innovation origin. My question is, what kind of infrastructure for this kind of individual, because that you should control your data is where everything is going, but what kind of, where do you supposed to sit this data? Because as individual, you don't have the capacity like Amazon or Google or other even governments ones are not using their own cloud. So at the end of the day, physical presence of this data is belonging to somebody else. And if we do not provide the infrastructure and the technology, like Peiman says, which help these users who are not very fluent with the security or checking their, you know, like we have a lot of people, they share their personal data, they don't care what's going to happen if I'm going to share this thing or the other. It doesn't concern me. They do not understand. So they need the technology to help them to secure and the space. So what are your ideas or thoughts about that? Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the question. Actually, what is important in here is not that I, as an individual, interested in my own data or my neighbor's data. What is interesting in here is that what is the benefit of my data? That's the question that one infrastructure which is built like Amazon is asking itself. That okay, now we have this data. What is the inside of this data? If the inside of this data is giving enough profit, then infrastructure will come afterwards. If it doesn't give, it is the matter of economic concepts and accounting issues. If it is not useful enough, then why should we invest on it? That is one question. Then when they see that there are lots of data and they cannot handle it, they make it, make it public, or make the load of this data on the citizens like me. For example, they asked me to have a kind of cloud account on Google, or having a kind of a cloud somewhere, and keeping my own data with monthly payment from my own pocket to keep my own data there, while Google have access to that. And the same for AWS, Amazon Web Services. They did it. They wanted you to pay for your data when you are storing there. So the concept of new European Union data-centric concept that they want to do it is that it is the first step of human empowerment in the concept of data, that they will dedicate some places for you, and you will put your data there. If you don't like, you can delete it. If they don't like, they can delete it, and it will give you full access. But in any case, they collect all the data, they use interesting part, and they delete it, and they get rid of that. So that is the structure for the moment.
Thanks for the answer and a very
You're
good presentation. I joined to my colleague. That was very great presentation.
excellent, excellent, excellent.
Definitely, definitely. So I guess we're running out of time. I mean, if there's still a very quick question, anybody can still try to answer. If not, I mean, I have a lot of questions, but I talk with Peiman all the time, so I can ask him any other day. And if...
you are always welcome.
All right, so I don't see any more questions.
Okay.
Oh, I got the project. Okay, so Anna wrote something. The project idea presented is very good, and we will definitely put it. Okay, it's not a question, it's a statement, Anna. It's a statement. Okay, so
excellent.
So the time is running out. I want to thank Peiman for working hard. I want to thank everybody who came.
You're welcome. It was so nice of you, and it was great to see you guys in here. I hope this is the one good is the starting for our activities. I am sure we will see lots of people in this kind of meetings, especially for manuals. I think next time is Manuel or Alessandro's.
Mine, yes.
I'm sure we will.
Next week is not me. It's Alessandro.
Yes.
And the week before, after that, after Alessandro, it's me.
Okay, excellent. We will see more participants there, and this way we can start to discuss our idea, brainstorming, and afterwards we can go through the real activities. I'm really happy to be in here. It was great to see you, Rima, Daiva, and all of the participants in here that we don't see their face, but they were so kind to join. Okay.
Very interesting topic, Peiman. Really, I have one question, but we out of the time, but maybe we will have a chat later or just an email you just for consideration because very interesting experience.
I would be more than happy. Yes, sure. Yeah. Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay, I will email you and we'll see how it will can develop and contribute to research.
Excellent.
So thank you, really great and important presentation. I hope some thoughts will be to consider for all faculty during the weekend. And maybe if any questions, please really send for Peiman and the team, and I could be collaboration project because our marketers working on the users' experiences online and other human resources issues. So I think it's also very correlates to what you have taught us today.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Daiva for this comment. Okay. See you next time then.
See you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.